Hi, I'm Pedro from Coffee Parts, and today we're looking at home filter coffee grinders. Which one of these is best for you? Home filter coffee grinders. Now, we have 4 of the most popular ones we sell here, and they range in price. So running from the WPM Welhome Pro to the Baratza Encore, Breville Smart Grinder Pro, and the Fellow ODE. Now, these first 3 grinders are conical blade grinders with vertical motors, kind of the more traditional filter coffee setup. And the Fellow ODE is the exception, which is running a horizontal motor and 64mm flat blades. But we'll look into a bit later what the differences are in reality and which one's better for its price. Now, these are all stepped grinders. Normally with stepless grinders, they're more on the espresso side of things where you need that finer adjustment and you got that bigger motor. But for filter coffee, stepped grinders are perfect. And each one of these generally has roughly around 40 steps. The ODE actually has 31, but we'll look into it later because although they have a big range, and quite a few of them, you're tending to only use the narrow end of the finer range. And that's because in Australia where we are, coffee tends to be lighter roast than say the darker roast that you get in some places. The WPM Welhome Pro. Now this is the cheapest grinder we carry and really is an entry-level grinder. In saying that, we've always said it's better to have freshly ground coffee than pre-ground coffee. So let's look at it. Basically, it's a conical blade machine that's made for filter coffee and it's got your timing. So you can grind, you can change it in increments of 10 seconds. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and 60. You press it to start and you can press it to stop or you can let it grind out that time. We've actually pre-weighed here, which we're going to do in every grinder, 18 gram lots. And we're going to see how much when we grind 18 grams, how loud it is and how much is left in the container for 4 lots of them. And then we're going to look at also how easy these grinders are to clean. So let's get into it. We're going to just tar out the container here. So making sure that's tarred. And now we've pre-weighed 18 grams into these. I actually like to have the grinders running just so the blades aren't starting on the beans. So let's get into it and go. So they're actually quite loud. We'll check in a second, but let's firstly see how much coffee we got out. And we got out 17.9 grams, which I'm actually quite surprised that I only lost 0.1 of a gram in all that. And I just wanted to see, because it feels quite consistent, but there is a bit of static around the plastic. So I'm a bit curious if you tipped it out, how much would be left? And it's insignificant. This time round, we'll actually use the decibel meter and check. As you can see, running the decibel meter, yes, it is an iPhone meter, so not the proper calibrated ones, but using it, we're looking at around the 90s, which is quite loud. And just checking that again, 18 grams, spot on. Which I'm actually quite surprised at how consistent this grinder is being. Let's go third time. $18.1 grams. So I actually picked up a little bit of the retention from the first shot in there. And we'll go one last time, just so we're doing 4 tests per grinder. But what I am noticing is this grinder is quite loud. In terms of adjustments, you adjust it just like the Baratza Encore by adjusting the hopper. But apart from that, there's not much to it. Power on the side, start, stop, timer based on 10-second functions, and adjustment by the hopper here. That was registering once again in the high 90s, and even here it feels quite loud. So let's just check that last one, 18 grams. So what's been pretty interesting is the retention on it is next to nothing. It's really out grinding everything we're putting into it. It is quite loud. The grind adjustments quite narrow in what you can adjust. We actually played with it earlier and we'd pre-adjusted it for filter coffees, just like we've adjusted all 4 grinders. But yeah, cleaning these grinders can be quite simple or quite complicated depending on how deep you want to go into it. But generally speaking, every month or however you like, you can just run a pack of the grinder cleaning tablets. So we're using Cafetto grinder cleaner, but there's other companies like Grinds that do these tablets. And all you have to do is open the packet, which might be harder than it looks. You drop the coffee in, also not the coffee, but the grinder cleaning tablet. Grind it out, which we'll do now, and then you have to run some coffee, which we have here, to season them up again. So let's do that now. So now that we've ground out all the grinds, what it's doing, it's basically cleaning all the oil from the coffee, etc., around the beans, around the blades, sorry, and really getting that chamber clean. Although this product is safe and it's food grade, you really want to season and get it all out. So now we'll do the same thing, but with coffee, and then we can take the chambers out and the hopper out and just give them a clean. So let's put some coffee in there and grind this coffee out. And now you'd want to just be, after you get rid of that, you just want to be cleaning out this chamber and this hopper. To do that, it's quite easy. Turn the power off, go coarser all the way until it pops out. And once it pops out, now we can go give this a rinse. Give both of these a rinse, give them a clean and put it back together. If you wanted to now too, while the machine's off, you could get a brush and just clean around in there. This machine is actually a new machine, so it's quite clean, but just wanted to show you how to clean it, just so you get the gist of it, you know, a month or 2 down the track. Value for money, I think this is a cool little grinder. Just, I'm not sure I could live with the volume. But yeah, now let's look at the Baratza Encore as the next step up from this grinder. Now this machine has always been a bit of a staple machine for the home filter coffee market, but also you actually kind of seem to find them in cafes. Now I know they're not a cafe machine, they're not meant to be sold to cafes, they are home grinders, but because they do filter coffee quite well for their price, you just tend to see them in cafes that do very small amount of filter, but still want to have an optional grinder for filter. Looking at these, they're 40mm conical blade with 40 steps. Now in this grinder, the steps actually make sense, and depending on what you're doing, a 1 cup V60 to a 2 cup, so a 1 cup V60 might be around, to say around the 14, when a 2 cup V60, so 1 cup at 15 grams, when a 2 cup V60 at 30 grams, you might be around the 20 grind setting to still get that time. But if you look at Mocha Master, you're higher up the range and you know, an AeroPress a bit lower. The steps make sense and you're using quite a bit of that range depending on what methods you want. Now, like in the previous grinder, we've weighed out 4 sets of 18 grams and we're gonna measure what goes in, what goes out, what comes out, and also how loud these grinders are. And then later on, we'll just show you how to clean them. And that's quite easy on this grinder. So first things first, let's measure how loud they are, how much coffee comes out. So we've got 18 grams set in these. One thing we like to do, so with this grinder, people tend to use the lid as a funnel when they're weighing their coffee. We've pre-weighed all these into these containers, so we won't be using the lid, but that's common to use your lid to weigh the coffee and drop it in, because by not having coffee in the hopper and having the motor going, you get a more consistent grind than having coffee there while the grinder's starting up. So let's do that, let's turn it on. And one thing to note is you can turn these on over here, or you can grind just by holding this here. To watch the unboxing of this grinder and putting it together, basically the hopper doesn't come in it and the little switch you have to pop in when you get it. We've actually done an unboxing video which you can watch. So let's get into it and see how this grinds out. We've got a tar this container out. So there we go. Now, the only little downside of these cheaper grinders is they are quite loud compared to the grinders we're used to hearing. But at this price point, they do an awesome job. So we've got the grinds here, we put it 18 in, and we got 17.9 out. So we've lost 0.1 of a gram somewhere in there. We'll go through and we'll do 3 more just to see the consistency between them. And here we go. Check this one out, and we got 17.9 again, so exactly the same as the previous one. Once again, 17.9. It's been spot on every time. And the last one, what I'm going to do on this last grind too is actually pour it out here on the bench so you can see the consistency of the grind. And in this case, we got 17. It keeps bouncing between 17.9 and 18, and it's actually settled at 17.9. So there you had it, 4 sets of 17.9 when we put 18 grams in. Yeah, so really consistent. In terms of the grind, we actually got results where we used the curve tools earlier, and we'll put that down in the comments below. But the grind size is quite consistent for a filter coffee. We did use these curves earlier, and we'll put in the results, but every grinder we've run through these. So now, in terms of using the grinder and adjusting it, it's quite simple. On-off switch, grind on demand, grind into a container. You adjust the hopper settings by you adjust the grind settings by turning the hopper. And if you do want to clean the grinder, you'd turn it off, which is on the off. I actually like to unplug them too. And you go all the way to coarser. And once you get to coarse, the hopper comes out. And once the hopper's out, you can actually take the blades out quite easily. They come out, and to align them, you just have to align the red tab back in with the red to get them back in. While they're out, you can get a brush, you can clean them. And the hardest part when you put it back together is getting this rubber to sit back around it. It actually is a bit fiddly and always takes me a few goes to get it back on neatly. Now, in terms of cleaning them a bit more, you can get the grinds tablet and run it through. Basically open the packet of grinds, run it through, and then you want to run some coffee out to season the machine back up. So the grinds come in pack like this. This is a Cafetto branded one. There is a brand called Grinds. Effectively open a pack, open up, run it through, and then run coffee through to season it again. And you've cleaned the grinder. If you open it up, you can clean the blades with a brush. Super easy to maintain. And apart from it being quite loud, great little grinder. One super cool thing about Baratza is they share the same philosophy as us. We like to repair, reuse equipment because it's not a throwaway society. Like, these things are made and they're not meant to go to landfill straight away. So the super cool thing about them is they have actually created schematic diagrams for their whole range and made their parts affordable. So any part you need, whether it's for a new unit or for a unit from many years ago, they're available, easy to buy. Diagrams are on our website. You can buy them quickly online and you can keep your baby going for many years. And that makes it cool because throwing machines away is not cool. The Breville Smart Grinder Pro. Now, this is the only grinder out of the 4 that we're reviewing that also does espresso out of the box. The Baratza Encore technically can do espresso once you recalibrate them, but they're not really made for espresso, when Breville has made an espresso-filter grinder. Well, we're only looking at the filter aspect in this comparison. With this, they've got 40mm conical blades and 60 grind settings. But once again, we're probably going to be using a narrower range in that filter than the full 60. Like before, we've measured out 4 18 grams of coffee to see how it runs through, and we're going to measure how loud the grinder is and also show you how to clean it. Let's get this going and measure the first 18 grams through. So we'll just have to tar this container out. There we go. You can run start stop. It's got some timer settings, but we're just going to be running it manually. And 17.8 grams out. On this one, we'll see what happens across the next 3 as well. So this grind is running at the high 80s. Earlier it was running mid 80s, but now we're finding it high 80s, which is still a bit lower than the WPM and the Encore, but still a little bit loud. Let's check what this comes out at. 17.9, so that's twice 17.9. Let's see what the next 2 show us. And in this case it's 18, spot on. So 2 17.9s, 1 18. And let's see what the final one will do. And 17.8 this time round, 17.9 just changed. So we got 3 17.9s and 1 18 grams, which is quite consistent. So far, all the grinders have been equally consistent in getting the coffee in and out. This has been slightly lower in the mid to high 80s decibels compared to the other 2 in the 90s using an iPhone decibel meter. In terms of adjusting this machine, you got your start stop function. You got your grind amount, so it's based on time if you wanted to do it on the time aspect. And you got your coarseness and fineness here, which is all shown on the LCD screen. So 60 notches on this, which you can move across there, time, start, stop, really simple operation. And it does come with a different support if you're running it for espresso. Now, when it comes to cleaning, one simple thing to do, personally, I'm a bit paranoid, so I actually like to physically unplug the machines, which we'll do now. But you can easily turn off the hopper like that to release the hopper. And once you've got your hopper out, the blades, once again, there's a little red dial in there and a handle. You can turn that and it comes out. You can clean the blades with a brush. And like I said before, you could put some grinding cleaning tablets through that and it grinds completely out, and then you use coffee to season them. It's super easy. Lock the blades back in, put it in, put the hopper back in, lock it back into position, and there you go. Simple cleaning operation and super simple to lock everything back up. Turn the power back on and away you go. The fellow ODE. Now, I feel like everyone knows this grinder. It came off the back of a Kickstarter campaign. They use Kickstarter really as a marketing tool and not as a funding tool. Their video was insane and the unit looks hot. It's full metal build. It looks like it could be at home in a cafe or at home compared to some of the more domestic looking units out there. It's Really beautiful. I'm sure you've read and watched a lot of reviews now in terms of the 31 grind adjustments, where you tend to just be using the finer settings, because really if you're not using dark roast in Australia, we're using more for lighter roast for our filter. You're a bit more limited in the range, and the way they've done their blades, it's 64mm flat. They've done a very different end to the blade, so it doesn't allow you to go finer. In saying that, companies like SSP have done new blades, and there is a lot of work coming out on new blades, which will be available in the new version of these later in 2022, and also companies making them. One thing that's getting updated too is also the container to try and have less static. So in many reviews online, you see people drop a little bit of water into it to reduce the static onto the beans. And we're not going to be covering that, because we're kind of looking off the shelf, out of the box, like for like across the 4 grinders. So really to compare this against the WPM, the Encore, the Breville, and this. So looking at it, it's hot. Like, I can't tell you, in real life, I love the look of it. Fellow being Fellow always release their products in black and then come out with other colors like they did with the kettles. So I'm assuming there will be new colors in time, maybe a white, which would be cool. Now, the range here that they've got inside, we found is for your darker roast, so not so much applicable for what we're using. And we found that using a setting of 3 here was a bit more comparable to a setting of 12 on the Encore. But in saying all that, let's do what we did with all the grinders. Check out 4 sets of 18 grams, grind them through, check how loud it is, and then show you also how you take the front out to clean it and etc. like that. Let's get started and grind out the first one. As usual, let's tar this, lock it back in, get the grinder going, and now it will beep when it stops. While those blades are detecting resistance, it keeps going. It's got a PID in that motor. Let's take that out and check, and we got 17.8 out. So first run, 17.8. Let's see what the next 3 runs have, and let's also get the decimal meter out. Lock it in. Now, it is a little bit loud in the early 90s while grinding, but for some reason, compared to the other WPM, which was also in the 90s, this doesn't feel as loud sitting next to it, and I'm not sure why, but it doesn't. And we got 17.9 out, so 17.8 first run, 17.9 second. Let's do 2 more runs and see how they go. One thing I haven't been doing is tapping that to really get it all out. I think I've actually ruined the experiment, because now we've got 18.4, because I had forgotten to tap that out earlier. So in saying that, let's just go for 1 more run and see. Let's just get it out. It is a messy grinder and it's well documented online, so we're not going to go too far into that. And 17.7. I do feel a bit slack that I forgot to do that on the first 2 runs. So I might do this again and just give you a really fast run through the results. So we'll just get the videographers to really speed through. But I did want to do all these tests live just to show there was no camera trickery and we were being fair with all the machines. And we're just going to quickly weigh out another 4 sets and go again quickly. And here we go again. Okay, tart at 0. Let's lock that in. 18 grams. There we go. And we got 18.1 on this first run. 18 spot on this second run. 17.9 on this third run. Actually changed to 18 just as I was grabbing it. Let's see what the final run does. And once again, spot on 18. Super consistent this run. The last run, it was my fault. I actually forgot to drop out any excess from the chamber there. Now, one thing we're gonna show you is how to clean them. Quite simple to clean, but we won't go into detail because there is so many videos online on this, but effectively the front panel just pops off. You just grab like that off, and now there's 2 sets of 4 screws. So if you were to just want to like reset the grind, like bring it back to 0, you do the top 2 and side 2, the plate comes off and you can realign it to 0 and put it back on. If you wanted to get into cleaning, you'd go to the ones that are off center, these 4, and the whole plate comes off. I'm just gonna turn the power off, like paranoid that I am with all grinders. I love it being completely off. And grab this little screwdriver to show you guys. Also to note, with these 4 screws, there is just a little arrow just before them, pointing at them. So they're the ones where you can get in to clean the grinder. The other ones are really just there to reset it back to 0. And it comes out like that. That last screw was a bit stubborn, but it's still quite easy. Got your 4 screws in front. So looking back inside here, you can remove this little spring here that holds it all together. You push it in, it comes out, and then you could clean these blades and those blades. So these blades are fixed, they're the ones that rotate, and you could pull that spring out there and give it all a clean. Using a brush, give everything a clean. You'll see there's that little bit of retention in there. This is a new grinder. You'd probably find a little bit more build up with time. Once again, you could use coffee grinder cleaning tablets like the Cafetto or the grinds to run it through and put a seasoning coffee, and every so often you can pull this out, use a brush, give it a proper clean, then just put it all back together. It's actually super simple, and it does remind me a bit of the EK in terms of how to do it. I'm just used to the commercial aspect of the EK, but yeah. And it's back together. I know there's people that love this grinder and some people that complain that it could have been better. I'm not sure if it's due to the marketing campaign had so much hype and it's matching that hype, because it really is a cool little grinder. Messy, but cool. And personally, I love the look of it. So I'm a bit biased when it comes to this grinder. Once Fellow does the update to the blades and the container, I think this will be a weapon little grinder. Let's look back at all 4 grinders again and review the pros and cons of each one and work out which one's best for you. So this bit is the hardest bit. Which one performed best? Now, they range in price, starting at the WPM and finishing at the Fellow. And looking at them, the WPM and the Baratza were quite noisy. Technically, the Fellow registered pretty much the same amount of noise, just didn't feel that noisy, and the Breville was the quietest. Now, in terms of the coffee, they all ground consistently, really close to that 18 grams every time. Obviously with the Fellow, we did it twice because that was my mistake, but they all came out really consistent. In terms of being able to clean them, they're all simple to clean. The Fellow takes a little bit more work having to remove the screws compared to like just being able to turn out those hoppers and taking those blades out. But realistically, you're probably going to be using the grinder cleaning tablets and not opening them up that much. When it comes to size, obviously the Baratza and the WPM have the smallest physical size. And when it comes to looks, in my opinion, the Fellow looks the best. It also feels the best. So it's really nice that it's a completely solid unit compared to the more plastic versions. The Baratza was probably the most serviceable in that the parts are easily available. They provide schematics. They really want the longevity out of that. Looking at all of them, it really comes down to your budget. The WPM is quite noisy, but was a lot more consistent than we expected. The Baratza Encore has been a staple for many. It is a well-known, well-built grinder. Bang for buck, it's on point. The Breville actually provides also a lot of value, and it's the only one that can do espresso and filter, although to move from one to the other probably is a bit fidgety, but it's got the LCD display, it's quiet, it does tick some nice boxes, and although the Fellow pretty much is double the price of these two earlier ones, it really does feel solid. It looks hot. It's the messiest one out of the group, but there's something about it that I just personally like it. I think I'm biased. I love the look of it and probably staring down the wrong direction just looking at the looks, but it is a hot little unit. I think in terms of bang for buck, and if you're just looking at the filter side of things, the Baratza probably is, you know, the way to go. And if you're looking at looks and performance as well, then the Fellow. Overall, you'll be happy with each of these grinders. At each price point, they do make sense. So it's kind of hard to have a clear winner. Kind of like them all. Personally, I have the Fellow at home, so I'm a little bit biased, but I'm happy with all of them. Thank you for watching. If you've liked this video, hit the thumbs up. I'm curious, which of these grinders do you have at home? Which are you planning on buying? Or any other comments you have, just hit them up below. We'll get back to you. And like always, if you've liked this video, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get 2 to 4 videos out to you guys weekly, comparisons. We really want to keep this going. We want to keep building out this channel. Your support means the world to us. Thank you. Hit subscribe, hit like, comment. Thank you.